Welcome to another behind the scenes look for one of my short films. This time we're checking out my sci-fi cyberpunk short, Reinstall. When I first started coming up with some ideas on what to do for my next short film, I knew that I wanted it to be a sci-fi film, and I knew that I wanted it to be colorful and bright and incorporate some cool visual effects. And I also wanted it to be something that was simple and to challenge myself to tell a story without dialogue. And that's, of course, to kind of follow the idea of to show, not tell, a story inside of a world. Over the years, I've been really interested in the 80s retro aesthetic of like Outrun and, this kind of like vaporwave, synthwave style. And I've just loved it. And I'm not exactly sure why I love it so much, but I think maybe it reminds me of when I was a kid and I would go to the video game arcade and you would see neon lights hanging up on the wall, or, this like crazy colored carpets and patterns that you see at the movie theater when you're, when you were back in the 90s. I always loved that kind of look and feel of that genre of just retro 80s. So as I was kind of like looking out into the world trying to get inspiration for what the film was gonna be, I was looking on Instagram and like looking at a bunch of different artists' works and stuff like that, and seeing these kind of like post-apocalyptic and cyberpunk super cities, and artists that drew characters that were like half woman, half robot, or technology, the different floating cars and all this cool stuff that just kind of fell under the genre of sci-fi futuristic. And after having looked at that stuff for a while, I decided that I wanted to do a cyberpunk short of my own. Going along with the idea of showing, not telling, a storyline, I decided to put a bunch of props on the wall and in front of the character to try to explain the storyline of the fact that there's this woman that is a like top level, super intelligent hacker, electrical engineer type that is able to hack a police drone and subsequently assassinate the mayor of the city in order to reinstall a new revolution. I did probably more props on this film than any other film that I had done up to this point. I found a really cool place that does custom printed newspaper prints, which brought a realism to the props that were hanging on the wall. I put together a bunch of newspaper articles in Illustrator and in InDesign. I sent them the file and they printed a newspaper for me. It was like made of the actual newspaper material, and the colors in the print and the kind of this like dot matrix in inkjet print looked exactly like a regular newspaper, which was fantastic. The movie itself takes place in a fictional place that I called Neo Tokyo, and in order to kind of illustrate that, I took a map of Tokyo and put that up on the wall and drew on top of the map with some highlighters that were specifically for blacklight reactive, and kind of like showcased that this character was sitting in her apartment plotting against the government to try to overthrow the corrupted mayor of Neo Tokyo. I also did several smaller photographs that were supposed to look like spy photographs that maybe her or the hacker organization that she works for was doing secret surveillance and finding out who these people were. And in order to do that, I went online and found some stock photography of people that were kind of looked like they were just like walking by the camera or doing something nonchalant, not staged. And I took those and sized them down to a photograph size and added like a little bit of an overlay, and took that to the Kinkos, the FedEx Kinkos, and got that printed as actual photographs, and I taped those to the wall along with the newspaper clippings and the map, and to give the kind of like that set design, that production design of this character's research that had happened all the way up to this point. And I think it adds a lot to the film because you can absorb these different cues from the stuff on the wall without having somebody explain it directly to you, which which I think turned out really great. I also made props as electronics that were scattered across the tabletop, and these were supposed to be electronics that, you know, this character had scavenged for. We actually went to the Goodwill and just bought like a bunch of cheap electronics. I think one of them was like a clock radio. One of them was like an old DVD player. It's a great place to go and find props at. Check out your local Goodwill. You can find lots of really cool stuff. There's also the little boxes of plastic explosives that are sitting on top of the table, which is kind of like a major plot point. Those boxes, I just designed those in Illustrator and just exported the file, sent it to the print shop, and I also did a bunch of research on what actual plastic explosives boxes look like and what they say on them. So all the information that's listed on that box, it says like blasting explosive or whatever, that's actually on real plastic explosives. And also too, that logo, that AEL logo, that's a brand that makes this kind of stuff. So I tried to keep it as accurate as possible for added realism. And then of course you have the soldering iron, which is something I just bought on Amazon. I also made prop headphones for Liz to wear, for her character to kind of like have a very highly stylized and unique set of headphones. I constructed those out of just a pair of white headphones and some fluorescent masking tape and a Gundam model. It's like strangely futuristic and it's bright and fluorescent, but at the same time it's kind of like it feels homemade, and I wanted that to be part of, you know, her style. Was that something that she was creative and that she, you know, put her own creativity into her work. And then so that laser rifle gun that's like in 2 shots at the very beginning, that's just a Nerf gun. And I took it apart and then just repainted the various parts, and then I put it back together and I went over the whole thing and weathered it. It was a lot of effort for 2 shots, but I think it really adds character to that moment. I put so many props together for this film. It was so much fun. I love doing it, and there's no one bigger way that you can, you know, add life to your film than to like add great props that reflect the world that they're in. As for the character that Liz plays, I wanted the styling for that character to be very specific, very bold, very neon, and, you know, very punk and very, you know, edgy, but also very feminine at the same time. I had this idea, I had this vision for having a female character that was just very intelligent and, you know, was super creative and could be very resourceful by scavenging electronic parts and then manipulating like a modern, you know, drone in order to get what she needs from it, and but do it like in a cool, creative way. And I just saw this girl that was like, you know, edgy and tough and was able to be like a leader of a hacker group, and somebody had tattoos all over her, and, you know, I found these really cool fluorescent tattoos that glow under black light, which I was like, I needed to have this in the cyberpunk film because it's just like look really cool and be a reflection of that world and be a reflection of that character. So she's got tattoos all over herself, and, you know, we spent, I don't even know, like we spent an hour putting tattoos all over her. That was amazing. I love the way it turned out, and it really gives her, you know, an edge, and it makes her look like somebody that, you know, is like kicking ass and taking names. I also knew that when I was gonna shoot this film, I wanted to do something that was really colorful as far as the lighting is concerned and, you know, the camera movement is concerned. I wanted it to be dynamic and, you know, really engaging. This was the first time that I had rented a hazer and was able to kind of like get that look of those really cool light rays that everyone's after all the time. And, you know, it's just that really awesome backlight, colored backlight hitting her in the back, and we can see the kind of the dark patches of shadow kind of like cutting through, you know, the shape of her, the headphones and her head and everything. I had also really wanted to use an ultraviolet light in a production for a really long time, and it turns out that the ultraviolet light by itself is not enough to light the scene. What you actually need to do is you need to like use the ultraviolet light to light up the stuff that's fluorescent, that reacts to it, and then also use like a supplementary light. For example, I used like a softbox just like this, but then I added a Congo blue color gel tube, which is like super saturated, very, very deep purple blue. And that kind of like actually raises the exposure of the scene without kind of like, you know, creating the shadows and things from a like a white light source that you would normally see. So it kind of like hides the fact that you're also exposing the scene, you know, with a secondary light. I was just thrilled with the way that it looks in Reinstall. I just think it's just awesome. It just looks so cool, right? For the light that was hitting the map and the photos on the wall, that was lit by, you know, an RE1K outside the window, and I had like a Lagoon blue color gel on it. The combination of just all of the different colors, like the pink and the blue and the haze machine and the camera movement, it just really tickled the senses as far as cinematography is concerned, and that's exactly what I was going for. It was very much like eye candy. I knew that the visual effects for this film were going to be pretty expansive. You know, if I really wanted to kind of illustrate what this world looks like. So in order to do the cityscape, I knew that was going to be like a really massive undertaking. Wasn't going to go and try to like build an entire city from scratch. So I actually found some really great 3D model kits from Kitbash 3D. So I used a combination of their kits. You know, it was like I put all those together and kind of custom crafted a city that I was really happy with. I spent a lot of time doing revisions of what that city was going to look like because I knew that the image of that city was going to inform the visual look for the rest of the visual effects and for the rest of the film. The kind of the placement of elements that lit up in that city were ultimately going to reflect how I would need to light the scene at the very end because, you know, she's standing in front of the window. I'm going to have to like replicate that lighting to make it look good. So I constructed this nighttime scene and ultimately ended up with a Neo Tokyo that I was happy with. It was really a great exercise in literally world building. After I had written a script for this, I knew that I was going to have to develop a police drone, but I wasn't sure what it was supposed to look like. I tried for a while during pre-production to model a 3D drone in a way that I was happy with, that I'd be able to, you know, show to Liz as reference and say, hey, look, this is what it's going to look like. This is what you're going to be working on. And it was really hard. This was one of the hardest things that I had ever modeled before. I did one design that was like kind of like a hockey puck, and it kind of reminded me of that robot from the movie Flubber. You know, I started over and I started like creating another more organic looking shape that, you know, it ended up looking like a big beetle or something. And again, it just wasn't what I was going for. So I was like really struggling with figuring out what this drone was going to look like, because that was a very important part about how the movie's going to look, because this was something that needed to be, you know, menacing and kind of like, you know, cold and calculated, and something that, you know, would be threatening. It's kind of like an oppressive police drone, but it also needed to look really cool and futuristic. And so I really struggled with that, so much so that by the day that we were shooting, I told Liz, I was like, look, I'm sorry, I don't know what it looks like. It's just gonna look like, pretend there's like a basketball on the table in front of you, you know, but I had no idea what we were kind of shooting, and that can be a very difficult situation to be in. Eventually, I found some inspiration on the internet and, you know, did like a spherically shaped drone, and I liked where it was headed, so I continued down that road, and I ended up kind of making it look like it was slightly elongated, you know, it was more technologically, you know, advanced. And once I had the completed design for the drone, I went through and textured the entire thing, and that was a whole separate process. I think that wear and tear, that dirtiness on the drone also tells a story. That means that, you know, these drones have been flying around Neo Tokyo for a long time. And if you look closely, you can see that underneath those scratches, underneath like the paint job on the drone, it's like carbon fiber. How does it work? I don't know. It's some kind of anti-gravity sci-fi tech, right? But this really was like the most difficult thing I had ever modeled before. It had like lots of like, you know, like curvature, very organic shapes to it, but at the same time, it was very like technologically advanced and very modern. But I love the little thing. I think it is somehow, it's like kind of cute and kind of cool, but also kind of menacing, you know, and like you wouldn't want to be like staring at it if it kind of floating up to you and interrogating you and stuff like that. But I love it. I think it really adds to that world of like what technology is possible in Neo Tokyo. This was also the first time I had ever done visual effects in a way where it was like 100% CGI. Like that opening shot of the city from above that's 100% CGI. And I'd never done that before, but it was worth exploring and, challenging myself to do. Those Kit Bash kits that I put together, I modified like very heavily. I added neon signs and I took geometry from it and made it light up and did different cool things to kind of like make it look like a cool cyber city. So by challenging myself to do that, I think I was able to use this film as a stepping stone to becoming a better visual effects artist. Originally, I tried to make some music for this on my own because I normally will make all of my own music for my films, but I didn't have any experience making that kind of music, that kind of like synthwave, dark synthwave, cyberpunk, techno music. I'd never done that before, so I tried my best, and I wasn't all that happy with it. So I ended up going with a track from a stock, music site, and I think it just fits perfectly. It's dark, it's deep, and it's also very, very energetic. And I took the track and I ran it back through Logic, and I added some percussion and I added some sound effects and I added some synth, just to kind of like really fill it out and make it more in line with this scene of the character, what the character is doing. Throughout the process of making this film, it really helped me to appreciate the importance of everything being in the right place at the right time. When you have all of your props and your actors and your locations and lighting and camera movement all moving in sync with one another, it creates the opportunity to capture a magic moment. And that's exactly what it is. It's just a moment. And getting that moment and capturing that is what makes it that much more satisfying to be a filmmaker. Well, thanks for joining me on this behind the scenes look for my latest short film, Reinstall. Subscribe for more cool films, follow me on Instagram for more cool filmmaking stuff, and until next time, thanks for watching.